One word. That's all it would have taken. One word from one man, and England would still be a Catholic country today. No Church of England, no Bloody Mary, no pilgrims sailing to America, no British Empire as we know it. The word was yes, and the man whose entire job was to say it refused. What happened next was so violent, so accidental, and so insane that historians still argue about it 500 years later. A king begged, a pope ducked, friends were beheaded, monasteries were ripped apart, and you can still see the ruins today. And here's the spoiler. The man who destroyed the Catholic Church in England spent years desperately trying to save it. This is the story of the single decision that created the modern world, and how close it came to never happening at all. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. The Pope's favorite king. Quick picture the guy who smashed England away from the Catholic Church. You're probably picturing a religious rebel, a Protestant firebrand, someone who hated the Pope. Wrong, completely wrong. Because Henry VIII started his reign as the single most loyal Catholic king in all of Europe. Not loyal, obsessed. When a German monk named Martin Luther kicked off the Protestant Reformation by attacking the Catholic Church, who picked up a pen and wrote an entire book defending the Pope, Henry, the one you think you know, the Pope, was so thrilled he gave Henry a personal title, Defender of the Faith. And now here's the detail that should break your brain a little. Pull a British coin out of your pocket. Look closely, you'll see the letters FD stamped right into the metal. Fidei Defensor, Defender of the Faith. English monarchs still carry that title today. Right now. A fossil from the moment Henry was the Pope's golden boy. So how does the Pope's favorite king become the man who burns the whole system down? One woman, one son who was never born, and one marriage that turned into a trap. Stay with me, because it's about to get dark. Chapter 2. The Curse in the Cradle before Henry. There was his older brother, Arthur. The Golden Prince, the actual heir. Arthur married a Spanish princess, Catherine of Aragon, daughter of the most powerful royals in Europe, and then months into the marriage, Arthur dropped dead, fever, gone. So the English did something that sounds insane to us. Now they recycled the widow, they handed Catherine to the next brother in line, Henry, and for almost 20 years, it worked. Henry and Catherine, king and queen, happy, even. There was just one problem buried in the whole thing, a problem from the Bible, because the book of Leviticus said something chilling about marrying your dead brother's wife. It said you'd be childless. Now hold that thought, burn it into your memory, childless. Because watch what happens next. Catherine gets pregnant, the baby dies, she gets pregnant again, stillborn. Again, a son. He lives a few weeks and dies. Again. 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 6 pregnancies. Tiny coffin after tiny coffin. And out of all of it, one child survives, a girl. Mary. To us, that's a tragedy. To Henry, it was something worse. It was proof. Because Henry needed a son. Desperately. And not for the reason you think. Chapter 3. Why a daughter was a death sentence. Henry wasn't just being a sexist medieval jerk who wanted a boy. Okay, he was that. But there was something genuinely terrifying underneath it. Henry's own father had grabbed the English crown out of a bloodbath. Decades of civil war, brother killing brother, cousins slaughtering cousins over the throne. They called it the Wars of the Roses, and it had nearly destroyed England. And the lesson Henry took from that? Crystal clear and absolutely chilling. A kingdom without a strong male heir tears itself apart. England had never been successfully ruled by a queen. The one time a woman tried to take the throne, it triggered, you guessed it, civil war. So Henry looks at his daughter Mary and he doesn't see an heir. He sees a fuse. He sees the whole country burning all over again the second he dies. He needs a son, a living, breathing, legitimate son. And his wife, now in her 40s, is never going to give him one. So Henry starts asking a question, a dangerous one, a world-changing one. What if I was never really married to her at all? Chapter 4. The woman who said no, and right on cue, history hands Henry an obsession. Anne Boleyn. Now, Anne wasn't the most beautiful woman at court, and the records are blunt about that. What she had was way more dangerous than beauty. She was sharp, witty. She'd spent years in the glittering French court and come back making every other woman in England look like an amateur. And she did the one thing no one ever did to a king. She said no. Look, kings took mistresses constantly. That was just normal. In fact, Henry had already slept with Anne's own sister. The expected script was simple. King wants you, you become his lover, you get gifts, he eventually moves on. Anne tore up the script. She would be his wife, his queen, or she'd be nothing to him. No mistress deal, no compromise. And it drove Henry, a man who got literally everything the instant he wanted it, completely out of his mind. We still have his letters to her. They're not the letters of a king, they're the letters of a man losing it, begging, desperate. So now Henry's two greatest desires fuse into one obsession, a son and Anne, and both roads lead to the exact same place, get rid of Catherine. And to do that, he needs one thing. He needs the Pope to cancel his marriage. This should have been easy. Popes did this for kings all the time. Instead, Henry walked straight into the worst timed no in human history, and the reason had almost nothing to do with him. Chapter 5. The trap nobody saw coming. Okay, this is the part where it all turns on pure, dumb, cosmic bad luck. Pay attention, because this is the hinge of everything. In a normal year, the Pope probably says yes. Henry's a loyal Catholic king, defender of the faith, asking for a routine favor. Popes had quietly granted annulments before. Easy, but this was not a normal year, because in 1527, at the exact moment Henry needs this favor, the most powerful man in Europe, Emperor Charles V, sends his army crashing into Italy. His troops go berserk. They storm Rome itself. They loot churches, butcher priests, desecrate the holiest sites in the Catholic world. It's called the sack of Rome. And in the middle of the chaos, the Pope ends up basically a prisoner, trapped, at the total mercy of Emperor Charles V. A quick one, if you'd like me to cover the story of Emperor Charles V and the sack of Rome, let us know in the comments below. Now here's the knot. Here's the thing that decided the fate of nations. Catherine of Aragon, the wife Henry wants to dump, she was Charles V's aunt, his blood, his family. So picture the Pope's nightmare. On one side, Henry asking him to cancel a marriage. On the other side, the emperor whose soldiers are currently standing in the streets of Rome holding a knife to the Pope's throat, and that emperor's beloved aunt is the woman Henry wants to throw in the trash. If the Pope says yes to Henry, he humiliates the most dangerous man alive. He basically declares the emperor's aunt was never a real wife and her daughter's a bastard. He's not going to do that. He can't. So he does the thing cowards in power always do. He stalls, delays, commissions, hearings that go nowhere. Month after month, year after year. Just praying the problem disappears on its own. It was the most expensive stall in history, and it was about to blow up in everyone's face. Chapter 6. The right hand that failed Henry's fixer for this whole mess was the second most powerful man in England, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey. A butcher's son who clawed his way to the top through pure brilliance. He lived in palaces grander than the king's, and he was certain he could get Henry his annulment. He couldn't. He tried everything, and in 1529, He set up a special church court in London to settle it once and for all. For the first time ever, a reigning king and queen of England were summoned to appear. And that's where Catherine of Aragon did something legendary. She doesn't argue legal theory. She gets up, walks across the room, and drops to her knees in front of Henry, in front of everyone, and begs him directly. Reminds him she'd been a loyal wife for 20 years, asks what she ever did to deserve this. Then she stands up, refuses to recognize the court at all, and walks straight out the door. The whole thing collapses. Nothing gets decided. And Wolsey. Finished. Henry strips him of everything. He's arrested for treason and dies on the road back to face the king. A broken man. His reported last words: if he'd served God half as well as he'd served his king, God wouldn't have abandoned him. The Pope won't move. The cardinal is dead. The normal path to an annulment is gone. And now Henry stands at a fork in the road that will decide the next 500 years. Chapter 7. The fork in the road. Everything now hangs on what Henry does next. He's got 3 options. Option 1, give up. Stay married to Catherine. Stay loyal to Rome. England stays Catholic forever. No Reformation. The Church of England never even exists. Option 2, keep waiting. Keep begging Rome. Keep hoping the politics shift. More years of stalemate, but still Catholic. Option 3, take it himself. What if Henry doesn't need the Pope at all? What if the King of England could just declare that no foreign priest in Rome has any power over England and grant himself the annulment? That was the unthinkable one. That meant defying the Pope, smashing 1,000 years of tradition, ripping England out of the universal church that had baptized and buried every English person who ever lived. And here's what I need you to understand. For years, Henry did not want to do this. This is the defender of the faith. The guy who wrote a book defending the Pope. If Charles V's army hadn't been in Rome, if the Pope had just been free to say yes, Henry takes option 1 or 2, gets his annulment the normal way, and England stays Catholic. The Reformation might never happen, but the yes never came, and then something happened that shoved Henry off the cliff for good. Anne Boleyn got pregnant. Chapter 8, the point of no return. Now there's a clock, and it cannot be stopped. If Anne's pregnant, and if it's a son, Henry has everything he ever wanted. But there's a brutal catch. For that baby to be legitimate, Henry has to be married to Anne when it's born. To marry Anne, he has to be free of Catherine. And the Pope still won't free him. Time's up, no more diplomacy. The baby is coming, whether Rome likes it or not. So Henry takes option 3. He'd already secretly married Anne in early 1533, while still technically married to Catherine. Now he needs to make it legal, fast, by his own power. And the peace was already in place. A new Archbishop of Canterbury named Thomas Cranmer, reformer, loyal to Henry. Willing to do what no one in Rome would, Cranmer holds his own court on English soil, under English authority, and declares Henry's marriage to Catherine void. Days later, he declares the marriage to Anne legal. Done without the Pope, against the Pope, and then Henry makes it permanent. In 1534, Parliament passes the act that severs the cord completely, the Act of Supremacy. It declares the King of England the supreme head of the Church of England, not the Pope. The king, for the first time in 1,000 years, the souls of England don't answer to Rome, they answer to the crown. There is no going back, but a decision like this is never free, and the bill comes due in blood. Chapter 9. The friends he killed, because now everyone in England has to choose. You have to swear an oath. Publicly accept that the king, not the Pope, runs the church, and for some people, that oath was a betrayal of God himself. The most famous? Sir Thomas More. More was Henry's friend. His Lord Chancellor, one of the most brilliant minds in all of Europe, and he would not swear that the king was head of the church. So he just went silent, didn't attack the king, didn't swear the oath, hoped silence would keep him alive. It didn't. Arrested, locked in the Tower of London, tried on shaky evidence, and in 1535, Sir Thomas More, the king's old friend, was beheaded for refusing to bow. He wasn't the only one. a bishop, monks. Anyone who clung too loudly to Rome risked the axe. This wasn't paperwork, this was enforced with the executioner's blade. And then came the part that scarred England forever. The part you can literally still go and touch today. Chapter 10, the ruins you can still visit for centuries. Monasteries were everywhere in England. Massive abbeys. Some owned as much as a quarter of the entire country's wealth. They were centers of prayer, learning, charity. They were also unbelievably rich. And, crucial detail, they answered to Rome, not the king. So Henry, pushed by his ice-cold genius minister Thomas Cromwell, looked at all that money and all that loyalty to the Pope and took it. Between 1536 and 1540, the dissolution of the monasteries, Henry shut them all down, monks and nuns thrown out, treasure seized, land sold off to noble families, and that last part was evil genius level. Because by selling the land to England's most powerful families, Henry gave them a permanent reason to keep the break from Rome forever. If Catholicism ever came back, they'd have to give all that land back, so they made absolutely sure it never did. The great abbeys were gutted, lead stripped from the roofs, stone hauled away, the buildings left to rot into ruins. And those ruins are still standing. Travel across England today and you'll see them: skeleton arches, roofless walls, open to the sky. Tintern fountains, Revaux, Glastonbury, they're beautiful, they're haunting, and they are the physical scars of one man's decision, carved into the landscape, still visible 5 centuries later. But here's where the whole story flips into something almost unbelievable, because remember why Henry did all of this. Chapter 11, the twist that ruins everything. Let's recap the entire point. Henry broke from Rome, defied the Pope, beheaded his friends, destroyed 1,000 years of tradition, all to marry Anne Boleyn and finally get a son. So, how'd that go? Anne's pregnancy, the one that forced his whole hand, the one he broke a church for, delivers a baby in September 1533. It's a girl. A girl. The exact thing he tore the country apart to avoid. And Henry's grand obsessive love for Anne, it rots almost overnight. She miscarries. She fails to give him a son. The marriage curdles into pure poison. And within 3 years of the wedding he destroyed Christendom for, Henry has Anne Boleyn arrested on charges of adultery and treason. Charges most historians think were made up, and beheaded. The woman he remade England for, dead by his order. He'd go on to marry 4 more times. 6 wives total. The son he finally got, a sickly boy who became king as a child and died at 15 with no heir of his own. But here's the final gut punch. The irony so perfect it sounds fake. That daughter, the disappointment, the wrong baby whose birth forced the break with Rome. Her name was Elizabeth, and she grew up to become Elizabeth I, one of the greatest rulers in human history, half a century on the throne, crushed the Spanish Armada, a golden age, and she's the one who took her father's chaotic, bloody, half-finished mess of a reformation and made it permanent. The child Henry didn't want secured the revolution Henry never meant to start. Chapter 12, how close it came. So sit with this for a second. The English Reformation, the thing that shaped England, then America, then half the planet, it wasn't some grand, unstoppable march of progress. It was a near miss, a coin flip, a chain of accidents. Watch how many times it could have gone the other way. If Catherine had just given Henry a living son, England stays Catholic. If Charles V hadn't happened to be Catherine's nephew. If his army hadn't happened to be sitting in Rome at that exact moment, the Pope says yes, no problem. England stays Catholic. If Anne Boleyn had agreed to just be a mistress like everyone expected, Henry's obsession burns out, no marriage needed. England stays Catholic. If Anne hadn't gotten pregnant right when she did, no clock, no panic. Henry keeps stalling at that fork forever. England stays Catholic. So many threads, every single one of them could have snapped the other way. The man who destroyed the Catholic Church in England wanted to stay Catholic. He tried to stay Catholic. He begged Rome to let him stay Catholic. The whole Reformation happened because a pope trapped by an emperor couldn't say yes, and a king trapped by a pregnancy couldn't wait one more day. Henry VIII died in 1547, bloated, bitter, and having reshaped the world almost by accident. The ruined abbeys still stand, open to the rain. The coin still read Defender of the Faith, a title given for protecting the very church he tore down, and the question still hangs there, 500 years later. What if the Pope had just said yes? England might still be Catholic. There might never have been a Church of England, no pilgrims, maybe no America as we know it. It came that close. One decision, one word, never spoken, and everything changed.